When former Dallas Cowboys linebacker Marshawn Kneeland died last year at the age of just 24, the story understandably generated headlines. Here's a young man, promising NFL career, and a life cut tragically short. The coverage focused on the grief, the shock, the family, the teammates, the Cowboys organization trying to process this unimaginable loss. And all of that matters. But yesterday we learned something that should have been the headline all along. And that is this. Marshawn Kneeland was diagnosed post-mortem with CTE at just 24 years old. 24. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't a retired player in his 50s or 60s. This wasn't someone who spent decades living with the cumulative effects of football. This was a young man who should have had his entire life ahead of him. And according to reports, Kneeland never suffered a single diagnosed concussion during his NFL career. Not one. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he never had a concussion. We know better than that. Football players at every level have historically played through symptoms, hidden symptoms, or simply never recognized them. But that's almost beside the point, isn't it? Because the fact that a player can reach the NFL, never have a documented concussion, still be diagnosed with CTE after his death, should force all of us to confront some uncomfortable realities. The conversation shouldn't be simply about concussions anymore. The conversation should be about football itself. For years, the NFL has pointed to improved helmets, enhanced protocols, neurologists, spotters in the booth, rule changes, kickoff modifications, player safety initiatives. And some of those changes have absolutely helped. I don't think there's any question that the league is safer today than it was 20 years ago. But safer and safe are not the same thing. And every time a story like this emerges, we're reminded of that reality. Because the uncomfortable truth is that football remains a collision sport. Thousands upon thousands of impacts occur every season, never resulting in a diagnosed concussion. Yet researchers have spent years examining whether those repetitive blows can contribute to long-term brain trauma. That's part of the discussion many people don't want to have. And frankly, it's the part that much of the sports media seems reluctant to fully engage with. Think about how this story was covered yesterday. A 24-year-old former NFL player is diagnosed with CTE after his death. Should be front-page sports news. That should be leading television sports programs. It should be sparking furious and serious discussion about what we've learned, what we haven't learned, and what this means moving forward. Instead, what we get? Many outlets treated it like a brief update, quick mention. A reader, as we call it in the industry. 30 seconds, and on to the next story, right? I watched SportsCenter last night. This story was essentially given a passing mention before moving on. Moana's in promo during SportsCenter got just as much time. And look, I'm not naive. I understand how modern sports media works. Networks pay billions of dollars for league rights. You see it. They invest heavily in partnerships. They build programming around those relationships. The NFL isn't just a league anymore. It is the foundation upon which almost all of the sports media business is built, let's be honest. And now the relationship between leagues and media companies is closer than ever. When business interests become intertwined, difficult conversations often become shorter conversations. That's just reality. But Marshawn Kneeland deserves better than a quick mention. The audience, who sports media outlets treat like dullards, they deserve better than a quick mention. Because this isn't merely tragic. It's a warning. Again, another one in a long line of warnings we've received over the last 2 decades. Every time one of these stories emerges, we hear the same responses, right? Questions are asked. Concerns are raised. Panels will discuss it for a day or two. And then inevitably, football season arrives. You have the Hall of Fame game, the preseason. Football season arrives. Everybody moves on. games kick off. Right around Labor Day, fantasy leagues begin. Go draft your teams. The betting lines go up. Got to get in those picks. Ratings soar. And eventually, inevitably, the story fades away. Until the next former player is diagnosed. Until the next family receives answers they never wanted. Until the next obituary includes a medical finding that forces us to revisit the same uncomfortable conversation. Nobody's calling for a prohibition on football, at least I'm not. Doesn't mean parents shouldn't allow their kids to play, but they have to do so knowing the risks. Doesn't mean the NFL should cease to exist, but it does mean this: honesty matters. Intellectual honesty matters. It means acknowledging, despite all the advancements, despite all the safety measures, despite all the billions invested in player health, football still carries risks we may not fully understand. And if a 24-year-old can be diagnosed with CTE despite never recording a diagnosed concussion in the NFL, we still have far more questions than answers on this topic. Marshawn Kneeland's death is heartbreaking. His diagnosis is alarming, and the biggest disservice we can do is to treat that diagnosis as a footnote instead of the story. Because if we're not willing to have the difficult conversation now, when a 24-year-old former player's been diagnosed with CTE, when exactly are we willing to have it?